A single column of tanks pushes across an open plain. No smoke, no explosions, no sign of resistance. From above, it looks like nothing but quiet fields stretching out. Then the lead tank hits a mine and stops dead. And that's just the beginning. The vehicles behind it scramble to slow down. Distances collapse in seconds. One tank tries to swing wide and hits another hidden charge. Within moments, the second tank, the third, are locked in place. A column that was moving becomes a line of steel blocks frozen on the dirt. And then the shells start falling, from far away at first. And above them, eyes are already watching. Not a battle the way we used to imagine it. Not an exchange of fire. It's a sequence. One event peeling open the next, like the outcome was decided before the first shot was even fired. Pause here for a second. Think about what you just saw. No dramatic music, no massive explosion in the opening shot, just a quiet field. And yet, that quiet field is more dangerous than any city street. Because modern war doesn't announce itself anymore. It watches, it waits, and it strikes when movement itself becomes a trap. You just watched more than one firefight. You watched modern war rewriting its own rules in real time. For most of the 20th century, the tank was king, speed and mass. If you had those two things, you could break through almost any line. In the industrial age, the sheer fact of a wall of steel rolling forward was a threat by itself. Generals planned entire campaigns around armored breakthroughs. Infantry supported tanks, artillery softened the line, then the tanks punched through. That was the formula, and for decades it worked. But that idea is collapsing right in front of us. And the collapse didn't happen overnight. It happened the moment the sky filled with eyes that never blink. Why did open fields turn into graveyards for armor? Let's walk through it step by step until you'll never see war the same way again. It starts with visibility. A Russian armored column moves into open terrain. Tanks lead. Behind them, troop carriers and infantry fighting vehicles. Inside, soldiers wait for the moment they'll dismount. The doctrine is simple, and it worked for decades. Move fast, concentrate firepower, hit the defensive line before the enemy can react. They're not trying to hold ground yet. They're trying to close distance, push infantry forward, force a breach. Then the follow-on forces widen it. Traditional maneuver warfare depends on momentum. Once you break the line, it's hard to stop. That's why armor loved open ground. Fewer obstacles, fewer delays, fewer chances for the defender to get organized. On paper, perfect. A commander could look at a map, see empty space, and call it an opportunity. But Ukraine changed the one condition that doctrine depends on: sight. The moment that column enters the field, it's being watched from far away. Not by satellites, by small recon drones. Hard to detect, hard to shoot down. They hover quietly and see everything. Add thermal imaging, add a wider sensor network, add cheap commercial drones modified for war. And suddenly the defender doesn't just know the direction of attack. They know the spacing of the vehicles, the types of armor, the exact approach points. They know if the column is tight or spread out. They know if the command vehicle is in the middle or at the front. The fight doesn't start when the first round is fired. It starts long before that, when the column is spotted and its route is understood. That's the first truth most people miss about modern war. Ukrainian forces don't have to guess where the attack is coming from. They watch it unfold in real time. They don't pick defensive positions under pressure. They picked them days ago. Fire plans aren't improvised. They're already built around the terrain and the predicted routes. Every tree line, every fold in the ground, every ditch has a purpose. From the attacker's view, the ground ahead looks open and easy. But that same space has already been turned into a managed kill zone. What looks empty is actually layered defense. One side thinks they're launching an attack, the other side already built the structure to break it. And here's the shift that changes everything. Once the defender knows the direction, they don't need to stop the whole column at once. They just need to cut the flow at the right place at the right moment. The column keeps moving, it has to. Doctrine demands it. But every meter forward pushes it deeper into a zone where its own strength becomes a weakness. The ability to move fast stops being an advantage and starts being a risk. Think about that for a moment. The very thing that made tanks dominant for a century is now what makes them vulnerable. Speed turns into exposure. And when the column crosses that invisible line, the first layer of the system is already waiting under their tracks. Mines on this battlefield aren't just there to destroy vehicles. They're there to break rhythm. And if you break rhythm, everything that follows gets easier to control. This is a lesson armies are relearning the hard way. A tank hits an anti-tank mine. The explosion might not kill it outright, but it pins it in place. Tracks torn off, engine damaged, and that 1 second changes everything for the vehicles behind it. An armored column depends on continuous movement. It's built for flow. So when one vehicle stops, the rest have to react. Drivers slow down, commanders have to decide, wait, or go around. Radios fill with urgent calls. In that brief pause, spacing between vehicles starts to shrink. A line that was stretched out for purpose gets compressed. The structure that gave the formation strength starts to weaken. A driver tries to bypass. A slight turn to the side, just a few meters. And that small adjustment carries the vehicle right over a second hidden charge. Reports from the front show that in dense minefields, the first explosion is often followed seconds later by the second and third vehicles losing mobility. A moving column turns into a stuck mass in a very short time. The core of maneuver warfare, mobility, starts to disappear. A tank that can't move is no longer a moving threat. It becomes a fixed point on the map, a target, and that's exactly what the defender wanted. Here's something worth understanding. When vehicles stop, a natural funnel forms. But this funnel isn't an accident, it's designed. Engineers and planners spent days mapping this ground. A disabled tank blocks the most direct route. A damaged vehicle on the flank restricts lateral movement. Vehicles can't reverse quickly, can't accelerate, can't turn easily in mud and craters. Mines don't just stop movement head-on, they shape it. They herd vehicles toward zones where other defenses are waiting. So mines are both a weapon of destruction and a tool of control. They decide where and how the enemy will move. From a distance, it might look like chaos, burning tanks, scattered troops, confusion. But it's actually the predictable outcome of a system designed to narrow choices until only bad choices remain. Eventually, the column stops being a force that moves with intent. It becomes a force just trying to survive in a space that was already tilted against it. And at that moment, the second layer starts to work. When the column loses speed and structure, Ukrainian artillery turns that delay into sustained damage. Towed howitzers, large caliber guns, rocket systems. Each one has a different role depending on range, timing, and target density. They're not firing blind into open ground. Every round is guided by information from above. Recon drones track movement and adjust fire in real time. Forward observers watch impacts, correct aim, and send updated coordinates within seconds. Even while the situation is still changing, artillery refines its aim. The time from detection to impact has shrunk to a level that would have been impossible in past wars. It used to be minutes of delay. Now it's seconds. And seconds matter when vehicles are exposed. But ask yourself this: is the goal at this stage instant destruction? No, that's the old way of thinking. Pinning movement and increasing confusion can be as effective as destroying a vehicle. A round that damages a track or forces a sudden maneuver changes the behavior of the whole formation. In many recorded engagements, only some shells hit directly. The rest land close. But even near misses have value, because they force commanders to react fast without knowing what's ahead. One driver accelerates to escape fire, another swings wide to avoid a threat, and by doing that, they move into another zone where danger is already set. Under pressure, decisions get faster and less accurate. Fear narrows vision. Training breaks down. Artillery's real purpose isn't to destroy every target. It's to increase the probability of mistakes every single second, to turn a coordinated attack into a series of panicked reactions. And now, the picture comes together. As pressure builds, mistakes stack up. The battlefield punishes every wrong move harder than before. A vehicle shifts position to avoid crossing and hits another explosive. Another slows down too much and becomes an easy target. There are no safe choices in this environment, only choices with different levels of risk. Commanders inside vehicles have to read incomplete information while under constant threat. Smoke, dust, radio chatter, alarms. A slight delay in reaction can lead to bigger consequences for the whole group. What used to be controlled movement now looks like a series of isolated reactions. Artillery turns a stalled column into a vulnerable column, and each decision made under that pressure leads to more losses. When confusion deepens and damaged vehicles fall behind, another layer comes in to finish what artillery can't. Drones take over the precise work of destruction. This is where modern war becomes personal. Modern war becomes extremely specific and extremely targeted here. Recon drones stay overhead the entire fight. Damaged vehicles and exposed troops don't stay unseen for long. They build a live map of the battlefield updated with every pass. In some areas, multiple drones can exist over a single kill zone at the same time. Observation is no longer limited to short windows. It's nearly continuous, day and night. FPV drones show up after the situation has already tilted against the attacker. They're not for observation. They're for direct attack. Fast, guided in real time, used against targets already under stress. Vehicles trying to recover, armor that lost mobility, abandoned equipment, a soldier stepping out for cover. Operators don't rely on coordinates. They fly by sight, so they can adjust mid-flight and hit the spot where damage will be worst. The top of the turret, the engine deck, the ammunition storage, assets that still have value but are no longer fully protected. A tank that can shoot but can't move. An armored personnel carrier trying to escape. All of them expose weak points. The rear, the engine compartment. And this is the key point. This stage changes the very idea of cover. Infantry that reaches a trench might think they've made it to safety. For 100 years that was true. Dig in, keep your head down, wait for support. But drones track them from above, drop explosives into tight spaces, and fly straight into those positions, reaching a trench used to increase your chance of survival. That assumption shaped ground warfare for generations. It no longer holds. Small systems appear fast, approach from unpredictable angles, and strike before a response can form. The result is that there's no such thing as a safe zone anymore. Even if you find temporary shelter, if you're spotted, you can be neutralized within minutes. The ground that once protected you now just hides you until the drone finds you. The fight doesn't end when one side reaches a trench. It continues as long as the ability to observe and strike is alive. Drones don't replace other weapons. They complete the system by targeting what earlier stages leave behind. They make losses accumulate and often final. But even under this pressure, some units still keep pushing forward. And that's where the next illusion begins. The illusion of momentum. Remember this. Even after taking losses, Russian forces keep feeding more vehicles into the fight. New groups of tanks and armored personnel carriers enter from different directions. They try to apply pressure from multiple angles. On the surface, it looks like persistence. A belief that sustained pressure will eventually break the line. That if you throw enough steel at the problem, something will give. But every new wave enters an environment already shaped by the previous fight. The ground is already littered with destroyed vehicles. Those wrecks become obstacles and markers for defenders. The moment they approach, they're spotted, tracked, and placed under that same multi-layered system. The cycle repeats with striking consistency. Spot, slow, strike, finish. Vehicles moving forward are identified early, slowed before they build momentum, and hit by constant pressure from above and from far away. Still, some units do reach forward positions. Infantry dismount from armored personnel carriers and move toward trenches. Young soldiers roll into ditches they hope will give them cover, moving between shell craters. They made it this far. They survived the approach. But the reality of this battlefield shatters that assumption immediately. Reaching a trench doesn't remove the threat. It just changes the shape of it. The same observation from the sky that tracked the column now tracks infantry. And once your location is known, you become a new target. Entering a trench doesn't stabilize the situation. It pulls you deeper into the kill zone, because that position itself is part of the system, not outside it. The trench was mapped days ago. At the same time, anti-tank guided missiles and rocket-propelled grenades are used. Not every shot hits. But even a miss forces the target to react, and that reaction creates more mistakes and more exposure. Over time, these small effects stack on top of earlier damage. Death by 1,000 cuts. And this is the point of no return. The moment when the attack stops being an attack and becomes a rescue operation. The core truth of this phase is that early success doesn't lead to lasting advantage. To hold ground, you need stability, communication, and the ability to regroup. You need to bring up supplies, rotate tired troops, repair vehicles. But in an environment where every movement is observed and every position can be targeted, those conditions can't be met. Gaining the right to enter a trench doesn't mean you control it, and controlling it doesn't mean you can hold it. What looked like a breakthrough at first becomes something else entirely when it can't be sustained. It becomes a trap. The illusion becomes clear. You didn't break the line. The line let you in. Now ask yourself, is this just a war far away in another country? The answer is no, because the logic of this battlefield doesn't care about borders. Tanks that cost millions can be disabled by drones that cost thousands. Mass and price no longer guarantee protection, and this logic doesn't stop at tanks. Expensive warships, expensive aircraft, air defense systems, all of them face the same question. Can you see and strike cheap threats faster than they can see and strike you? For the United States and NATO, this isn't abstract. Europe's eastern flank, the Baltic states, Poland. The open plains of Eastern Europe look a lot like the fields we just described. If those skies fill with swarms of small, unmanned systems, what do expensive platforms mean? What does a multi-million-dollar tank mean when a drone operator with a gaming controller can end it? Warfare is shifting its center of gravity from massive force to cheap numbers and the ability to see. The question is whether Western defense is ready for that shift. And that question has nothing to do with geography. It's about your security too. About how alliances will fight the next war, not the last one. Now, with all the layers revealed, here's what's left at the center. Mines slow movement. Artillery adds pressure and damage. Drones observe and finish what's left. All three combine to take away the one thing armored forces depend on: speed. In this kind of environment, there's no such thing as surprise. Every movement is seen. Every delay increases risk. Every mistake is punished. The battlefield has memory. There's an old term for this in chess: checkmate. That's when you still have pieces on the board, but every move you make just leads to defeat. These tanks were in checkmate before they even started moving. The defender isn't improvising a response. They've already read every move ahead of time. They've already built the board. The more they move, the deeper the checkmate gets. That's the new reality facing the king of maneuver warfare. And America had its own moment like this before. In 1941, Pearl Harbor. One morning, new technology from across the ocean made every defense the United States trusted suddenly look obsolete overnight. Battleships that took years to build were sunk in hours. The rules changed in a day. Today, small drones hovering over battlefields are delivering the same kind of shock to military doctrine. Not with battleships, but with systems that cost less than a used car. Just as those black ships once ended an era, the countless eyes looking down from the sky are quietly ending the era of armored maneuver warfare. And once you see it that way, you'll never look at a battlefield the same again. This is bigger than one battle. It shows modern war shifting from raw power to control, information, and timing. From who has the biggest gun to who sees first and acts fastest. And that leaves us with a real question. Are the United States and NATO fully ready for a battlefield where exposure is constant and mistakes are instantly punished? Where the sky itself is hostile? And we have to add one more. What does this mean for America and its allies? The era of relying on one expensive platform might be ending. In a battlefield dominated by cheap numbers and seeing power, what should alliances protect and what should they change? Do we build more armor or do we build better eyes? The answer isn't in anyone's hands yet, but the question is now impossible to ignore. So what do you think? Are tanks truly finished, or is there a new way for them to survive? Maybe with drone escorts, active protection, new doctrine? Drop your take in the comments. I read every one. And if this changed how you see modern war, hit like and subscribe. I break down defense tech and strategy every week, because understanding the next war is the best way to prevent it.